What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Girl Who Talks Sports with me, Sam Cardona, and thank you guys all for listening today. If you're listening on whatever podcast app you listen to, hello. If you are watching on YouTube, hello. If you are unaware, the podcast is now on YouTube. Including this one, the past 4 episodes are now up. Full-length episodes of recordings of me doing the podcast. So if you'd rather watch and listen, you now have the opportunity to do so. And I'll finish off my plugs. If you would like to subscribe and follow on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, Pandora, wherever it is that you get your podcast, please, subscribe and follow whatever option it gives you. And you can also leave an Apple Podcast review. It's very helpful for me if you guys leave. You don't even have to write anything. Just click 5 stars or how many stars you want to give me. 5 would be preferable. And you can also follow the podcast on Twitter. TGWTS Podcast is the @. You can go there to follow for updates on the podcast, funny content, memes, sports stuff. And also I'll post clips from the video that I record. So if you want to just kind of watch small snippets of things, it's on their Twitter. So be sure to go on there and give it a follow. We don't really have a lot of stuff to ramble on, as we usually do in the beginning of all my episodes. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is one of the big stories from last week, and it has to do with the Washington Redskins. So as of right now, it is 2:15 on Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. So as of right now, we do not know what the new name of the Washington team is going to be, but we have some new information. So they are officially retiring the nickname and the logo of the Native American that they have as their logo and the actual name of Redskin, which they are retiring mostly now because they're being threatened in terms of money. They've been trying to get rid of this team name for a very, very long time. It is considered an ethnic slur in the Native American community, so obviously it's not a great to have as a team name for a football team. But they will be announcing the new name, I think maybe tonight, which kind of sucks because I wanted to be able to say it on the podcast, but I'm not sure that will be happening this episode. If anything, we will talk about it next week. So like I said, it is 2:15 right now. If it happens while we're recording the podcast, I will be sure to mention it. But we have some interesting little tidbits that have been released that might give us an idea of what their new name is going to be. So I read in an article that Ron Rivera wanted to make it military related. And then I saw a tweet from, I cannot remember for the life of me who it was, and I didn't take a screenshot of it because I'm stupid, but they said that there was an air force of African American pilots called the Red Tails. And I was like, oh, that seems to work pretty well because it still has the red word in the name, and they don't want to stray too far away from what they originally had for their name. So having red in the word is probably good. They can also I think they're keeping their colors, the burgundy and the gold and the white are all staying the same colors, so they're not going to change it to something too drastic. Last week we had discussed a few possible names. I believe the Red Hawks was one that I was a fan of, as well as the Renegades. I thought that one was pretty cool too, but that's probably not what they're going to be. I think it's going to be the Red Tails, which honestly, pretty cool name. The Washington Red Tails works out pretty well. So I like that a lot, especially if Ron Rivera wants to have a military aspect to it. That's definitely where they're probably going to be pushing more towards. But again, it could be anything. Who knows what they're going to come out with. The funny thing was, they put out a press release which was circulating all over Twitter because it was the press release saying that they were retiring the name, the logo, everything like that. But on the press release, at the top, the huge header has the huge Native American logo with giant Redskins written across it. And I was like, I mean, you couldn't use some different stationery for that? Maybe just put like Washington, or if you even want to put like Washington Redskins, that's technically still your name. I get it. But you had to put the big logo of what most people are extremely like mad about. Like, why would you put that on the press release that says that you're changing the name because of ethnic reasons? It just didn't make any sense, but a lot of people went off on it and they thought that it was so funny. I mean, Twitter is just a really magical place. I absolutely love everything about Twitter. I think that it is a wonderful form of social media. It's probably my favorite form of social media. I get so much information from Twitter, which most of the time is, I would say 8 out of 10 times is true, with, a couple other things in the mix there. But anyway, I digress. So the Redskins changing their name. Don't know their name yet. I mean, we still have FedEx, which is the name of their field. Pepsi & Co. and Nike are all really big companies that said that if they didn't change their name, they were not going to be a part of their franchise anymore. So obviously, Dan Snyder, who is the owner of the Washington team, he probably just like lost his mind and was like, we gotta change it now after, how many years people have been asking us to change it now. And he even said, and I mentioned it last week, back in 2013, that he was never going to change the name. Like, ever. Never say never, Dan Snyder. You never know what's going to pop up. Actually, I just said never. You never know. Never say never, because you never know. Anyway, so that is what the update is on the Redskins situation right now. Hopefully, while recording the podcast, we may or may not get a notification giving us the actual brand new name of the Washington football team. But if not, if this episode comes out tomorrow and we have found out the name by then, I apologize, but we will discuss it next week and give it a nice little rating. So that is the update on the Washington football team as of right now. All right, let's get into our first segment on the show and my favorite segment on the show, Tea Time. Tea Time is my favorite segment on the show because we delve into the hot, steamy gossip of the sports world, and this week, it's not just one specific instance. It's more like an overview of things happening. And it's about the NBA bubble. So the NBA bubble, we discussed last week the NBA bubble ring. So if you missed last week's episode, I would suggest going back and listening to it. But if you don't feel like doing that, the NBA bubble ring is basically a ring that some NBA players can put on, and it helps to monitor their respiratory system, their heart rate, their temperature, all that stuff. So it's possible that that ring can flag COVID-19 symptoms ahead of time so that they can make sure people aren't getting too sick and then going to spread it to other people. So this whole NBA bubble is basically so that we can have an NBA season while in the midst of a global pandemic. So they have, right now it's in Orlando, Florida, in Disney World. They are given these bands that, if you've ever been to Disney World, I mean, the last time I went to Disney World in Florida, I was 18. I had just graduated from high school. I was just about to turn 18. I just graduated from high school. It was my high school graduation gift, and I went with 3 of my other friends, and we got these bands with our names on it, with the little Mickey, and you used it to scan into things. You can use it to scan into your room. You can use it for fast passes, so on and so forth. So I think they're using that same technology for these NBA players. And there's over 1,000 people in this bubble. I mean, you have staff, you have players, you have media, you have, personnel, medical people, all this stuff. So there's over 1,000 people in this bubble. And eventually, down the line, more people will be allowed in, such as family and friends. And right now, if you guys didn't know, in Florida, COVID is out of control. Florida just hit I don't know if it was a worldwide record or a national record, but in one day, Florida clocked in at 15,300 new COVID cases, which is absolutely insane. And for a really long time, New York was the epicenter of this whole pandemic, and now we are down, way down. They kept, Andrew Cuomo, our governor, constantly said, we need to flatten the curve, we we flattened that curve. It's not completely eradicated in our state yet, but we're down here. Florida and, Texas and Arizona and all of them, they're, up here. You can't see where my hands are, but they're above my head. On YouTube, you can see it. But so to have these guys in a big old bubble in one of the worst places in the country right now is a little scary. And we're going to get a little bit more into that. So it has been said, it is all alleged, who knows if this is true, but I saw this on Twitter and I was like, oh, this isn't real. And then I saw several articles about it on the interwebs. So apparently an Instagram model has already been invited into the NBA bubble. Her name is Anna Maya. And she said, there was a tweet that she put out saying that a basketball player has already invited her to come over to the bubble. And she was like, yeah, no, we're only a few days in. That's the end of it. This season's getting shut down early. And a lot of people were freaking out about it. And I was like, oh man, come on. Really? You couldn't wait a little bit longer? No, you invited somebody into the bubble, which we're trying to make sure that you don't get sick, but you invite a girl over. Come on now. Really? Really? I'm perplexed, honestly. And she even said, okay, I know that eventually down the line people are going to be invited in, and it's the second round of the playoffs. I forgot that I wrote it down. Second round of the playoffs is when people other than who's in the bubble right now will be allowed inside, such as friends and family and Instagram models, I guess. So she was like, yeah, I get that eventually down the line, but right now they've been in there for a week, I think, maybe 10 days. What are you doing? Why are you inviting people into the bubble? Why are people so stupid? Oh my god, I can't get over it. So that's not the only thing going on in the NBA bubble. Also, people have made it a point, not people, players specifically, mostly because they're putting it on their social media, and they have a lot of followers, so a lot of people are seeing this. Many, not all of them, a lot of them are saying, this is the life, I love everything about this bubble, I get food, I get a bed, I get working out with my teammates, yada yada yada. But there are a few others who have made it a point to complain about the NBA bubble. And from what it seems, I mean, these guys, there's things that they want to say. Overall, before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, a lot of people look like they're having fun. People are shotgunning beers, people are fishing, they're hanging out. It looks like a fantastic time. And if you don't follow NBA Bubble Life on Twitter, it is hilarious, and it'll keep you all up to date on everything everybody's doing in the bubble. It's a really good Twitter, so I recommend following that. But there's more things that people have had. They're complaining, basically. That I can't put it any more lightly, is that they're complaining about it. Rajon Rondo posted a picture of his extremely nice hotel room with the caption, and adding the NBA, I believe it was on an Instagram story, saying, like, this is like a Motel 6, which is obviously a pretty crappy place to stay, but it's cheap. So people will stay in a Motel 6. It's very simple, just like a bed and a bathroom, and that's all you get. And I'm like, dude, you have like a king-size bed, you have a TV, you have all these commodities? One of those words. And you're getting served food and all this stuff. Like, how are you saying that this is a Motel 6? I know that some of these guys have been living their lives. They make millions of dollars. They probably stay in these in beautiful hotels. But obviously there are circumstances here. There are a lot of circumstances surrounding pandemic and staying safe and making sure that we can house and feed over 1,000 people. Like, how can you just complain about... And also, like, it's not a bad hotel room. I mean, it's not probably the nicest place that he stayed, but it's quite a beautiful room. The picture that he posted, at least, looks really nice. And I was like, really? You have to make it a point to say that this is like a Motel 6? I was like, okay. Also, before we get into our next section of this, which is the food, 25 players have tested positive for COVID before they were even allowed to get on a flight to Orlando. One of them being Russell Westbrook. So just because you're some big star and invincible does not mean that you can't get COVID, because Russell Westbrook has it, and he posted like this whole thing and was like, I feel fine, I'm good, blah, blah, blah. But, like, you're not, like, there's no way that you're not going to get it. It just doesn't. Anyway, so that's what's going on in terms of testing before they even get there. And also, I don't know if it's everybody, but I know media has to wear these proximity alarms that if they're within 6 feet of another person for more than 10 seconds, their alarm starts to beep. And I think that is a pretty cool thing to have. So I don't know if that's everybody, but the media for sure has these proximity alarms that they cannot be within 6 feet of other people. So that's pretty cool. Let's get into the food accommodation. That's what I was looking for. Accommodations. That was the word. The food that's going on. So apparently within the first 3 days, with quarantine and people coming in, everybody's trickling in from their flights and whatever, and things like that, they're being given food that's basically kind of packaged. I mean, they're getting salads and chicken and chips and candy and all this stuff and fruit, and it kind of looks like someone called it like an airplane tray of food, which is kind of what it looks like, but it's not a small amount of food. Like, it's a decent amount of food, and I know being these amazing athletes, they have to consume a lot of calories because they're doing a lot of working out, but there's a lot of food in front of them, and apparently within the first few days of all this going on, like, the food is not going to be A1 stellar, absolutely incredible, amazing. So some guys are like, oh, this is pretty cool. I mean, I got a lot of food here. I'm going to eat all of it, da-da-da. Then other guys have been saying, I think Joel Embiid is one of them. It's like, I'm going to lose 50 pounds while I'm here because this isn't nearly enough food that I should be consuming. Again, totally understand that as a A1 athlete, you have to be consuming a certain amount of calories in order to keep up with your physical activity. But, come on, you can't... I don't understand the complaining when people are trying so hard to make sure that you can do it. You continue to complain about all this stuff. And then but the food will be changing soon. That's what they said. The food accommodations will start turning more into meals rather than, I have to stop talking with my hands. I keep knocking into things. Then the food will change eventually down the line once more people get there and they settle in. But J.R. Smith went on Instagram Live and made it a point to expose everything. Everything and anything. J.R. Smith went on Instagram Live and just started doing all this stuff. So he at first was reading off the menu for the food options, which he was saying like, short ribs and ribeye steak and all this stuff. Like it didn't sound like too bad, honestly. And he was even saying like, oh, this sounds like really good, da 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 da. And then he showed a video of his bed covered in candy. And he was like, how are they supposed to expect me to eat this and consume as being an athlete and all this stuff? And I'm like, where did you get all this candy to begin with? They didn't just maybe they did just give it to you. You don't have to eat it. It's there. But it looks like mostly like you picked it up and you're gonna eat it. I just, like, again, they're trying to make sure that this can work. It's way too soon for people to be like, oh, well, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. Like, relax. It's gonna be fine. But the really funny part of this whole thing is that J.R. Smith walked into his room and didn't have a blanket on his bed. And it is so funny to see his reactions. He's just like, why is there no blanket on my bed? He then asks for a blanket to be brought to his room. They bring him a blanket, and it's like an NBA fuzzy, like, kind of blanket that's, like novelty almost, I guess, that you would get as like a gift or something. And he's like, why did they give me this? I highly recommend going. You can literally find it anywhere online right now. Obviously, it's not on his Instagram story anymore. But if you just Google J.R. Smith, Instagram Live, NBA Bubble or something like that, I'm sure something will pop up. It's just an array of all these things. It is so funny. I was watching them for like 10 minutes. It's so funny. And he was just sitting there like, why? Why do I have a blanket like this? Then he continues on. He's talking more about the food and like all the stuff. And then eventually, while he's on live, he's like, oh man, yeah, I gotta stop. I exposed too much. I just got a text that says like, I gotta stop exposing all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, really? You thought nobody was gonna see your Instagram live? Like, what are you doing? Oh man, it is hilarious. So J.R. Smith kind of gave everybody the lowdown on everything. And again, the food, the blankets, the accommodations, they're gonna get better. That's what they said anyway. But a lot of people had some things to say. But again, it seems like everybody is having a fantastic time. Again, there's a lot of beer shotgunning happening, which props. I cannot shotgun a beer for my life. Fishing, I keep smacking my microphone, sorry. People are fishing, catching fish. I don't know if they're throwing them back or cooking them or whatever. Seems like a really fun time. I was like, I want to live in the NBA bubble. It just looks like a lot of fun. And again, down the line, people will be able to come in, see their families and all this stuff. Some guys were like, I'm going to opt out because like I'm not going to see my family for 5 weeks or something. And I understand that completely. But, if you want to play basketball and if you want to entertain the masses because everybody's itching for a sport right now, it's this is what's got to happen. Hopefully this doesn't go completely awful and down the drain. I want it to work. I hope it works because that gives us maybe a little bit of hope for a football season. But again, I'm not entirely sure if football's going to happen this year. I'm a little nervous. But anyway, so I know that's a lot. And I know that our tea time usually is something specific. But this time, it's just an array of things that are absolutely hilarious. Again, look at J.R. Smith's videos. They give you everything that you need to know, for sure. Alright, so what we're going to do next is kind of do an update on a story that we did a little while ago, but it has to do with DeAndre Baker and Quinton Dunbar. Back in May, we discussed this. This was our tea time for the episode. It's actually the food poisoning game. So this was during The Last Dance. I named that episode because we found out that MJ was not actually sick with the flu. He actually had food poisoning during that amazing game that he had. So if you go back to that episode, to that tea time, this is when I go into a lot of detail about DeAndre Baker and Quinton Dunbar. But just a quick synopsis. Back in May, they were arrested for robbery at a Florida cookout. And they made off with a lot of money and I think some watches, stuff like that. So this is an update on what's going on with all that situation right now. So there's some, I guess you could consider this tea time part 2 because it's interesting. They're right now denying, oh my god, did you hear that? That word I just made up, denying? They are denying the report of a cover-up by the lawyers. So right now, DeAndre Baker and Quinton Dunbar, this was allegedly done together. However, they have 2 separate lawyers. So Dunbar has lost his counsel, Michael Greco and Michael Weinstein, and the reason for it is very interesting. He's also has 4 counts of armed robbery, and DeAndre Baker has counts of robbery and also aggravated assault with a weapon, I believe, because he had a gun. Again, all alleged that this all happened. The switch happened because there was evidence that was obtained by the New York Daily News that there was a payout by this guy Greco, I think it's Greco, the lawyer for Dunbar. And there was these witnesses to the crime that came out and said, yeah, these 2 guys did this and da-da-da. And then apparently there was a payout in which they were given money by the law firm, and then all of a sudden all 4 of the witnesses recanted their statements. So it's a little fishy that this is all going on. The Miami Herald then reported that this guy Greco is under criminal investigation. But he had some things to say about himself and things that are going on with this case and all that stuff. So Greco came out and he said that the victims, as he putting in quotes, are extorting these football players. So apparently this robbery was fabricated, and Baker and Dunbar were put into the equation to have these 2 guys who have money be able to pay out these things and all this stuff. The victims in the past, this is what Greco has said, the people who are saying that they were robbed have been arrested or convicted in the past for conspiracy of murder, human trafficking, and false police reports. So he's saying that it's not out of the line of possibility that the victims of this robbery were in fact not victims, but instead the conspirators, the people who made it. And then they put Baker and Dunbar into the equation to then get money out of them. Dunbar took a polygraph test to say that he had nothing to do with this. He passed the polygraph test, but if you've ever watched Law and Order or any cop show ever, they've always said that the polygraph test means nothing because it's possible to pass it while also lying, which doesn't make any sense. But anyway, it's very possible the polygraph is true, but it's possible also that the polygraph may be false. And then DeAndre Baker's attorney, who is separate from this whole situation, said that there was no payment or no money offered from their side of everything. So right now, Quinton Dunbar is in a little bit more heat than DeAndre Baker is. But geez, this whole thing turned out to be a lot more spicy than I expected it to be. I mean, when we reported back on this a while ago, I was like, whoa, why are these guys, I think I said this during the episode, like, why are these football players who already have all this money robbing people for more money? It didn't make any sense to me. And it's interesting that now this information has come out that it's possible there's a conspiracy here and that the victims of the said robbery are in fact people who have fabricated it. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. And also the fact that they did a payout, allegedly, that there's a payout happening from the law firm, is just very strange because there's video evidence, but nobody has seen this video evidence, and then the witnesses have said stuff, but maybe they're like, we're definitely gonna lose this, so if we just give you what you want, will you just drop these charges? Maybe that's what happened. I love Law and Order SVU and Law and Order, so like my brain is trying to put this all together in terms of a TV show, and that's probably not the best way to do it, but it makes sense. It does. So, we're definitely gonna keep up with this situation because it keeps getting interesting, and this is over the course of, May, June, July, 3 months. What's been happening during all this time? I'm so interested. So we'll definitely make sure that we figure out what's going on with this. Maybe some more juicy information will come out. Maybe we'll get a conclusion in all this, but we'll keep up with that. So again, if you want to hear all of the details on the entire thing going on with DeAndre Baker and Quinton Dunbar, or what they have been arrested for, you have to go back to the episode labeled "It Was Actually the Food Poisoning Game." I forget what day, but it was around May. So if you go back to then, go to the description, tea time. You can scroll to the time. I always put the times in the description so that you can jump around if you want to, and just listen to that part so you can hear all the information. And then, hopefully, we'll get some more information and we'll be able to finish all of this up with a hefty and exciting conclusion to all this. Alright, so we have one more story before we get into our last segments of the show, before we wrap it all up, and that just has to do with some more COVID stuff. I know maybe you not want to hear about all this COVID stuff, but the NFL has now put in these different, what's the word? They're applying safety measures to different parts of the NFL season to try and make it happen. So first things first, there is no more jersey swaps. At the end of the game, usually for football players, they will meet up in the middle of the field, take off their jerseys, sign them, leave a note, and then they swap jerseys with another player. They have a photo op, all that good stuff. That is not allowed this season. Now, when I heard this at first, I was like, oh, makes sense. Okay, no more jersey swaps. You never know. And then I was like, wait a second. They're tackling each other and in contact with one another the entire game, but they're not allowed to swap jerseys with each other? I understand that we're trying to make sure there's a separation and the social distance, all that stuff. I understand. But it's just a little interesting that after the entire 4 quarters of a game of a contact sport, you can't swap jerseys with someone. So, I actually have a list of tweets from players saying the exact same thing. And at first I was like, oh, it's just one tweet. I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tweets from different players about this. So let's look at these tweets real quick. Starts with Richard Sherman, who had quote tweeted Tom Pelissero basically saying NFL players are forbidden from swapping jerseys. So he said, "This is a perfect example of NFL thinking in a nutshell. Players can go, engage in a full contact game, and do it safely. However, it is deemed unsafe for them to exchange jerseys after said game," with some crying emojis. Next, we have Melvin Gordon. Said, "I get off Twitter for a couple hours. I come back to them telling us no jersey swaps. It's something every day, dog." Yes, it is, Melvin. Then we have Deshaun Watson, who again quoted that same Tom Pelissero tweet. He said, "That's damn silly, bro," with a face palm emoji. Kenny Vaccaro said, "But we can tackle each other? Come on now." Mike Davis said, "So I can be tackled during a game, but I can't swap jerseys? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark." Shane Vereen said, "Why won't the NFL just say they don't want players swapping jerseys? This is wild, and what happens if they swap anyway?" DJ Moore, what is stopping jersey swap going to do? We already played in a whole game." Darius Slay said, "So we can tackle each other for 60 minutes, but can't exchange jerseys that take 2 minutes?" Randall Cobb said, "This has to be a joke." I'm sure there are more. But those are the ones that I found in an article, and I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. I understand they're trying to minimize all this stuff, but they can always just, like, mail the jerseys to each other. Nothing's stopping them from doing that. I feel like there's going to be some weird way around all this, but no more jersey swaps. And there's going to probably a mouth shield within the helmets, an Oakley mouth shield. It is designed by doctors and engineers in the NFL and the NFL Players Association. It's a clear guard that sits behind the mouth part of the mask behind it. So it's going to be closer to the mouth than the actual grate is. And there are openings and airways within this plastic mask, which I'm assuming there's some sort of scientific explanation for the spacing and the sizing of these airways, because they said apparently the spit or droplets that come out with these certain spaces it doesn't allow direct transmission somehow. How, I have no idea how they decided that was the case, but they're concerned about visibility and breathability. They said that they've been doing tests with it. They've given it to some players. Nobody has complained. However, I did see somebody complain, which was J.J. Watt. And J.J. Watt said that when Oakley came into play into the NFL, they all got those really sick visors to be putting on their helmets. Like, they're so cool looking, some of them. So some guys are like, yeah, like, I want to put the visor on it. And like, some of them are really dark, like you can't see their eyes. It's kind of sick. So J.J. Watt had said that he was really excited about the visors and put one on his helmet. And right after he put it on, he was like, "Oh my God, I hate this. Take it off. I can't see it. I can't see anything." So he said that if the mouth guards are going to be enforced and required to play within the helmet, he said that he may not play because he thinks that it's going to mess with his visibility and his breathing and all that stuff. So if this gets put into place, I highly doubt that J.J. Watt is going to be the only person to say something about this. I'm a bit concerned, not gonna lie, because if J.J. Watt says something, he's a really big player. He's got a big voice in the league. The people are going to follow his league. More people are going to opt out. Then there's going to make, then we're going to have replacement players, and literally this whole thing just looks like a toilet bowl flushing, and that it's just gonna keeps getting faster and faster and faster, and that it's just going to be awful. And I am so nervous for this fall. I'm so nervous. I really don't think that this football season is going to go smoothly. I don't know if this basketball season is going to go smoothly, figuring people are already inviting Instagram models over. We have to stay safe. And I saw a very interesting tweet that said, if we are just thinking about the 2020 season, that's not the best bet, because we have to be thinking for the 2021 season and the 2022 season. Because if we keep this up and this never goes away, it's going to affect us for much longer than it has to. So I hope they're being extremely safe and they're thinking things through, because otherwise we're going to be struggling to watch sports for some time, and not just this season. So hopefully things get better. All right, let's get into our segments for today's show. And our first, or our second segment technically, Tweet of the Week. Tweet of the Week this week has to go, we're jumping back to our Washington football team situation. And our Tweet of the Week this week goes to PFT commenter from Barstool Sports. He is a fantastic person. I can never get enough of his tweets. So he wins our Tweet of the Week this week, and he tweeted, "The Washington A team has no names. They take the name and colors of the team they defeated most recently." And honestly, that would be hysterical. Absolutely just incredible. They're just the Washingtons. They have no name. They just absorb whoever they defeat. If they defeat anybody this year, I just knocked over my water bottle. Why am I so bad at this? So anyway, that's our Tweet of the Week. This week goes to PFT commenter with some stellar thoughts about the situation in Washington. And let's end it off with our feel-good story of the week. And this week it goes to Simone Biles. Simone Biles was featured on the front of Vogue magazine. I know I have a picture here. So if you are watching on YouTube right now, that's what it looks like. It's very pretty. I saw it on Twitter. If not, I suggest looking it up if you're listening to it on Twitter. If you're listening to it on a podcast app. But so she is on the cover of the August issue. And what's really great about Simone Biles being on the cover of Vogue is that she, first of all, is an outstanding athlete. Just amazing. I love Simone Biles. I love watching her perform. I was so excited to watch her this year for the Olympics, but obviously didn't have the Olympics this year. And that's one of the things that she talks about in her story that they cover for her in Vogue, in the magazine itself. She talks about training during this time, during the pandemic. She talks about the Olympics getting postponed. Then she also discusses, body image, overcoming abuse, which is really important, and just the whole concept of Simone Biles is just radiates strong women energy. I absolutely love it. So that's our feel-good story of the week this week. Simone Biles, I love you so much. I hope you keep doing whatever it is that you're doing and kicking ass, because you're that good. So that's going to do it for our show this week, people. Thank you so much for listening and or watching. And don't forget to follow or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever it is that you get your podcasts from. Leave an Apple Podcast a review for me. It would be very helpful. Just click those stars. I would appreciate it very, very much. Hit follow on Twitter, TGWTS Podcast, for updates, videos, memes, sports stuff, all that good stuff. And I hope you all guys continue to be safe. Keep being safe. Wear your masks. Disinfect your hands. Wash your hands. Disinfect your stuff. Continue to stay safe. I hope everybody is having a pleasant summer as much as you can. And I hope you guys all have a fun, fantastic sports-filled day. And I will see you guys all. Oh, actually, I won't see you next week. That was my other thing I had to mention. I'm going to be away for the next 2 weeks. So for the next 2 weeks, we will not be having an episode. So I apologize for that. I will not see you guys next week. Please, please, please be safe. And I will see you guys. The new episode will be the first week of August. So enjoy the rest of July, everybody. I love you. Have a fantastic sports-filled day. Bye!